Flag burners should be prosecuted, punished, according to the president-elect, with jail time. We're pulling citizenship. That was the headline from the early morning tweets that sent political commentators into a tizzy today.
The president-elect goes on another tweet storm, including one over a veterans' protest against Hampshire College in Massachusetts for removing the American flag from campus after a student flag-burning protest against the election of Donald Trump. The president-elect tweeted, quote, "Nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail." The White House dismissed Trump's remarks.
This is not the first thing that the president-elect has said or tweeted that President Obama disagrees with. The freedom that we all have to express ourselves in the way that we choose to do so is protected by the United States Constitution. Similar freedoms related to the practice of religion, speech, the institution of journalism, are also enshrined in our Constitution.
But this morning, Trump Communications Director Jason Miller said this.
Flag burning should be illegal. End of story. The president-elect is a very strong supporter of the First Amendment, but I also think there's a big difference between that and burning the American flag, which has absolutely no place in our society.
Demonstrations continue at Standing Rock in North Dakota over construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Alongside the thousands of protesters are many journalists and filmmakers covering the story. Witnesses at Standing Rock have seen police targeting journalists. One reporter was shot with a rubber bullet while interviewing a protester, just doing his job. Others have been arrested and charged with felonies simply for documenting the story. What's happening to freedom of the press? Big question mark. How do you see this unfolding? And where are the rights and where are the constitutional guidelines in all of this?
Well, that is very simple. This right here is the First Amendment. That's where it is. It's gone. It's being destroyed systematically, little by little. You're seeing a message being sent out. You're seeing a message being sent out that there's a new sheriff in town. Now you're messing with oil, with energy, with the big gun.
Neil Young is asking President Barack Obama to step in and end the violence against protesters demonstrating against an oil pipeline being built in North Dakota on part of an Indian reservation. On Monday, Young posted an open letter on Facebook calling the protest at the Standing Rock Indian Reservation an awakening. Young says in the letter that demonstrators are standing strong in the face of outrageous, unnecessary, and violent aggression. He says law enforcement agencies and the National Guard are seemingly acting to protect the interests of the Dakota Access Pipeline's profiteers.
Well, Wilders is just the latest in a series of right-wing politicians to experience a meteoric, rise to popularity. Donald Trump will be the next US president, while former UK Independence Party leader Nigel Farage played a major role in Brexit. Marine Le Pen is running in the French presidential election in 2017, while Frauke Petry, with her Alternative for Germany party, is also gaining support. And Norbert Hofer, there in the bottom right of your screen, he's from Austria's Freedom Party, and it has a good chance of winning a rerun of the presidential election in the country next month.
There's a clear shift in European politics and it's becoming more visible. People are turning to non-establishment politicians, but it seems that the mainstream media has been quick to label them.
Unser Thema heute. Trump, Le Pen, Petry, die Stunde der Populisten.
What should Europe do to curb the rise of populism across the continent?
Die Rhetorik der Populisten ab. Sie ist universell.
Populists are popular. So is it power to the people or a degraded form of democracy?
Many in the EU are worried about the rise of populists across Europe.
Mainstream media, mainstream politics, they work hand in hand. And people are sick and tired of this politics. And I think that people simply want solutions to the vexing problems we have in the world today.
And actually, they were all wrong.
After Brexit and Donald Trump, will Italy be next? On December 4th, Italians will vote in a referendum on constitutional changes proposed by Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, the next opportunity for voters in a major economy to give the political establishment another kicking.
If the Netherlands were to head to the polls today, the country's Nationalist Party for Freedom would become the largest force in the Dutch parliament. That's according to the country's leading polling agency. It claims they would win 33 seats in the 150-seat lower chamber, while the ruling People's Party for Freedom and Democracy would lose a significant number of its seats, seeing a drop from 40 to 25. The Party for Freedom is led by Geert Wilders, a politician well known for his Eurosceptic and anti-Islam stances.
We'll be sovereign how to spend our own money. We don't have to spend it to Brussels or to bailouts to countries like Greece. We can spend it to our own citizens.
Kanzlerin, treten Sie zurück. Auf der ganzen Welt wirklich einmaligen Laissez-faire-Flüchtlingspolitik haben Sie uns eine Hypothek mitgegeben, die wir so schnell werden nicht ablösen können.
Ich danke Ihnen, Frau Merkel.
With François Fillon securing a candidacy for president with France's centre-right Republican Party, Moscow will be closely watching the French election in April. Not least because Mr. Fillon is an advocate of closer relations with Russia.
Eh bien, pour gagner cette guerre,
we are going to need a lot of effort and many allies, and among those allies is Russia, which we continue to sanction when it is Islamic State that we must defeat together.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he welcomes intentions to improve ties with Moscow, voiced by the French presidential candidate. Vladimir Putin and François Fillon have good personal relations that began when the two men were their country's prime ministers. Mr. Fillon's foreign policy is in stark contrast with the current president François Hollande, who has been accused in Russia of pursuing an American-aligned agenda. Russia has been under EU and US sanctions over its annexation of Crimea from Ukraine since 2014. As a result, this and the plunge in global oil prices have led to a financial crisis in the country. So it's no surprise that Moscow is keen to have these sanctions lifted. Moscow will be keeping a keen eye on the changing political landscape in Europe. The UK is preparing for Brexit, and in France and Austria, right-wingers are seen as favourites in presidential elections. And all of this as the Kremlin eagerly awaits the arrival of Donald Trump in the White House, with Russia putting much faith in him for better, improved US-Russian relations.
After big gains in recent days, a senior official in the military alliance fighting in support of Damascus said the Syrian army and its allies aim to seize all eastern Aleppo from rebels by the time U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office in January. The goal is in keeping with a Russian-backed timeline for the operation.
The Turkish military launched its operation.
Iran has called the U.S. military behavior in the Persian Gulf unprofessional. This came after the U.S. claimed that an Iranian vessel had pointed its weapons at an American helicopter in the Strait of Hormuz. A source in Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps said the main problem is the U.S. military presence in the Persian Gulf. He said the fact that Americans make such claims every once in a while shows that they want to portray the situation in the region as unusual. According to the source, all international vessels are plying the Strait of Hormuz with no difficulty, and it's only the Americans who keep complaining and making false cases against Iran. Earlier, 2 U.S. military officials claimed that a small vessel operated by the IRGC pointed its weapon on a Navy MH-60 helicopter on Saturday as it flew within half a mile of 2 Iranian vessels in international waters.
Iran marked its National Navy Day by holding a ceremony unveiling new indigenous technologies produced by Iranian technicians. The event was officially inaugurated by Iran's Navy commander and Deputy Chief of the Joint Staff of Iran's Armed Forces via video conference. According to Iran's Navy, the products aim at diminishing Iran's dependence on foreign countries. The products include a model basin for the hydrodynamical testing of vessels, a low probability of intercept radar or LPIR system, and an aerial fire control system dubbed Samen, which is custom designed for Jamaran-class missile destroyers. The curtain was also lifted off a storm simulation project to train Marines in emergency situations at sea. Other projects included the enhancement of Iran's Sea Shield radar system with an ability to integrate all Navy radars across the country. Iran's Navy gears up amid heavy foreign Navy presence in the region, especially by the U.S. in the Persian Gulf, a matter strongly opposed by the Islamic Republic for more than 3 decades.
The U.S. government is drowning in trillions of dollars in debt, so you might think it stopped spending billions on useless stuff. But as Paul Strand reports, one senator just put out a list of hundreds of projects that wasted $250 billion in taxpayer dollars.
Again, if we put every one of these things into place.
This is the second year Oklahoma Senator James Langford has put out federal fumbles, a big spotlight on outrageous cases of federal overspending, such as
things like the NIH did a study of about $2 million to study how children perceive food, including testing to see when food is sneezed on, if 5-year-olds will still eat the food. Now, I think we could have answered that question for less than $2 million.
Another maddening example, more than $500,000 digging up Icelandic church cemeteries.
Doing grave digging in Iceland, which we had paid for recently, to be able to study the cultures in the 8th century to the 12th century in Iceland. I'm not sure what the connection to the American economy is to that and how that helps us long-term to do grave digging in Iceland, but that's one of the things that we paid for.
Langford points out all this overspending adds up to a federal debt of almost $20 trillion. You may think that mega-large debt doesn't have anything to do with you, but if you're the average American household, your family owes $165,000 of that debt. Yes, $165,000.
And here are a few more of those examples of government waste from Langford's report. $1 billion for a Palestinian hospital or infrastructure projects, some of which are unusable. More than $2 million to investigate if climate change has an impact on China's panda population. And $500,000 to fund a temporary exhibit showing the sights, sounds, and smells of the medieval period.
Moving to Japan now, where around 310,000 chickens and ducks have been culled at a farm on the coast of the Sea of Japan. It comes after a highly pathogenic strain of H5 avian influenza was detected in 5 birds in Niigata and Aomori. Workers dug trenches and buried the slaughtered birds to contain the spread of the virus. The Environment Ministry is sending investigation experts to the affected areas and has issued the highest caution warning in the country.
We've seen an outbreak of EHD this year.
EHD, or epizootic hemorrhagic disease, is spread through midges or small flies during wet spring and dry fall months. This year, it left a devastating impact. More than 2,000 deer have been reported dead due to the disease. In 2012, EHD killed more than 3,700 deer. EHD hasn't affected the entire state. Game, Fish, and Parks officials say there aren't many reports coming from the southeast part of the state.
It's been most prevalent kind of in the Huron areas, down through towards Chamberlain and up towards Pierre is where we've seen a lot of our mortality.
For hunters in the state, Game, Fish, and Parks took steps to help with the down population. They offered refunds for licenses while also removing heavily affected areas from license drawings. As for future years, getting deer numbers back up isn't going to be a quick fix.
It'll be several years before we see them make a real good comeback from it.
With colder temperatures coming across the state, Game, Fish, and Parks expects midge numbers to go down. There is no way of helping deer fight EHD. The only hope is unsuitable weather for the disease.
Well, new information on a rare and deadly phenomenon in Australia. Health officials say 8 people have died and 1 remains on life support more than a week after a rare condition called thunderstorm asthma struck Melbourne. Heavy rain and wind last week triggered thousands of pollen allergy asthma attacks, and the storm caused wet ryegrass pollen grains to explode and disperse all over the city. Those tiny pollen particles getting deep into people's lungs, causing many to have breathing problems. Around a third of patients who suffered asthma attacks reported to never have had asthma before.
For the northernmost city in the United States, the sun will not rise again until next year. According to meteorologists, residents in Barrow, Alaska, can expect to see the sun again on January 22nd, 2017. Located on the Chukchi Sea coast, Barrow resides at the northern tip of Alaska. Barrow's long period of darkness towards the end of the calendar year is due to the Earth's tilt and how that relates to its orbit around the sun. Since Earth's northern hemisphere tilts away from the sun, it disappears in certain northern areas. In Barrow, the phenomena occurs every year.
Tuesday turned out to be a very active day for a lot of our southern states, including Mississippi. Look at that, caught on camera in Leesburg, and that was headed near some homes. We also saw significant rounds of rainfall across sections of Louisiana. This is some heavy rain and definitely being driven by the wind, reducing visibility significantly. And here's a look at some trees that came down in Scott County, Mississippi. There were so many homes that were damaged as a result of falling trees. Now remember, we are still going through the overnight with a lot of caution because there's still many more locations that are going to pick up on the rounds of significant rainfall. Gusty winds and the threat of tornadoes does on go for the time being.
The worst fire to hit Tennessee in 100 years has killed at least 3 people and sent more than a dozen to the hospital.
Hit the gas! Hit the gas!
You're watching cell phone video taken by 2 brothers as they escaped from a vacation resort area in the mountains of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. They say they had no warning as the wall of flames surrounded them last night, and their only choice was to ride through it or die.
Please, Lord, let us get off this mountain.
By early evening, wind speeds suddenly doubled, turning into hurricane-force winds that topped 87 miles per hour. Fires quickly spread in this drought-stricken area when burning embers flew and toppled trees ripped down power lines.
This is so close to the resort.
This community is at the edge of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the most visited national park in the country.
The smoke is really bad.
Logan Baker was at the Vista Hilton Hotel when flames came right up to the building.
They're keeping us in here for now.
Bruce Wilson is the Sullivan County Fire Chief. What is it like to actually be there?
It's horrible. I mean, it's devastating to, all those people lost their homes and businesses and everything else. Things they worked hard for.
This is what's left. More than 100 businesses and homes were destroyed. Just take a look at this. It was once an apartment building. Neighborhoods were left in smoking cinders. At this Red Cross shelter, more than 1,000 showed up, anxiously waiting to see what's left. Greg Lanham and his family escaped with their pets and the clothes on their backs.
Possessions are possessions. As long as I've got my family, that's all that matters, man, really.
Don't want to be afraid, hard not to hesitate, but we can't wait.
Sometimes say you gotta have a coffee break.
Be the change. It's not too late.